Okay, now we're on. So yes, no, like what we were saying, I do have the chickens and the horses and all the things to keep me sane. So, which is funny. They're like more lives, more things that I have to do, but it's that routine, it's that habit. It's like,
Yes.
I don't know, it brings me joy.
And it grounds you in normalcy,
Yes.
where like kids are constant change and challenge,
Mhm.
right? Constant evolution and challenge. But you have that grounding of like, I have to feed the dogs, and I get to take care of my horses, and I get to take care of my chickens, and I get to do all of these things that I did before I had kids, and now I have kids and I'm still doing them.
I know, it's just kind of like who
Comforting.
I am. It is very much so. Like somebody, I can't remember who I was talking to the other day. And then there's Brooks in the background. He's like, ooh, ooh, ooh. So he sounds like a gorilla now. But I was talking
Yeah,
to somebody the
monkey.
other day, and they're like, oh, you have chickens? And they were like really like concerned for me. And I was like, oh, no, no. Like I've had chickens my whole life. I just didn't have, I haven't had them basically since I moved away from home. But like having chickens was always a normal thing. And so I'm very, very excited for these chickens. Like every day I go down because I'm a hillbilly and they're in my basement right now because it's still kind of it's cold outside. And I'm like,
Well, then they're just little babies right
they
now.
are just little babies. They're like they'll be a week old tomorrow because they ship them. Believe it or not, like I literally ordered these chickens from a site called My Pet Chicken. And they shipped day old babies. So they were born on Sunday and they shipped them on Monday and I got them on Tuesday. Crazy.
Check it out in the show notes, dayoldchickens.com or
Yep.
mypetchickens.com.
mypetchicken.com. Order your day old chickens and they will deliver them to your post office.
Oh
and
my
then,
God.
And then the post office will call you and say, we have a box of chickens here for you.
Please come pick it up quickly.
That's exactly what they said. Anyways, I love this. So
hilarious.
Let's get into you a little bit. I know you kind of told me but what you're up to, but what have you been up to since we last talked on the podcast? Because has it been a year since you've been on the podcast, or has it been longer?
I think it might have been longer.
That's what I'm thinking.
Life's taken a corner for sure, and like this pandemic aside, life has taken a corner for sure. My husband's taken a job out of town, which has me at home, single parenting, responsible for selling a house, growing my business, and raising 2 kids basically by myself. So there's that. Last I talked to you, my business was just starting and just starting and growing. And I just published. Oh, that's right. I just published my book last I talked to you.
That's right. Yes. Or it was just going to happen, or it just happened. I don't remember if we had. Anyway, so how's that gone?
Well, it sits on my shelf. If you want to be honest, the purpose of the book was it was a personal experiment to see. It was what I do is I write stories. I help other people write stories. And I help other people get their books created and published. That's my job. I'm a writer. I'm an editor. I'm a creative consultant. I work with words. But to that point, I had only written for short form. So like opinion pieces, editorials, blogs, that sort of things, like on my own with my own byline, like, by Stephanie Renaud. And the reason I wrote the book was to take myself from idea all the way through publication so that I had more to offer my clients.
I like that. So can you, I mean, I don't know if this is the direction that you want to go, but I would love to know kind of what that looked like. Cause I think we talked mostly about courage last time. I don't think we actually got to talk about how to create a book.
I'd love to walk you through that a little bit. And like, I'm going to start with if you're sitting here listening to this podcast with me and Sasha, and you're sitting here going, God, I would love to write a book, but I'm not a writer. That's where a lot of my clients start. When I sit down with a new client and they talk to me about wanting to write a book, and I cannot tell you, it's probably like a 9 out of 10 ratio. People sit down and they say, I want to write a book, but I'm not a writer. And
I feel that on so many levels because I have tried, like I can write all day long, but I'm like, none of this makes sense. Like in book form, like I can write and give you all of my ideas, but how to make it like have a storyline is beyond me. like
Yes,
way beyond me.
it's both an art and a science. So there's architecture to it to a certain extent. So you have to, you like what you get to do with writing a book, especially if you're starting from a position of I'm not a writer, is just get started writing, is what I tell people. Just get started. Set yourself a goal of, pick a number. 250 words a day might work for you with your two little ones right now. 250 words a day doesn't take very long. You could probably get that done in 15 minutes.
I like it.
And then don't edit it, don't look at it, don't touch it, just leave it and walk away and come back again tomorrow. And what you're doing is you're training your brain into the habit of producing creatively at this rate. And then if you, like, as you progress down that road, what begins to happen is you'll start to see an idea take shape. You'll start to see a bigger idea take shape. And what a lot of writers get lost in, and I did too, what a lot of writers get lost in is the details of the page. They try and start with page 1, word 1, and write all the way through to the end in like a continuous stream. And some people, for some people that works. I have authors that I've worked with that have come to me with manuscripts already completed, and that's their process. And that's awesome if that's your process. But for many people, that's not their process. It's not my process when I write in longer form like that. So at that point, when you've gotten yourself, started, what you need is an outline. You need your structure. You need your foundation. It's basically, you need to create your table of contents is what you get to do at that point. So the next step I take writers through, and like, cause I took myself through it, was I sat down and I went, okay, what does this idea look like? What does this book look like? What do I want my reader to walk away from this book walk away from this book with? And I created an outline. And then, like, that's the hardest part of the work. Every person I've taken through that process is like, oh my God, number one, how did you do that? Pull that out of me. Like, I don't know. That's what I do.
Like,
it's magic. I can't tell you.
Exactly. I'm sorcerer.
It's magic. I can't explain it. If I tried, you still wouldn't understand. So we're going with it's magic. That's the hardest part of the work, is to pull out that foundation. And I support people with that. And so many times I've been told, like, that's amazing. That's exactly what I needed. Thank you for helping me get that. Because from there, it's easy. All you need to do from that point is just fill in the outline.
Yeah, I feel like I could fill in the outline. Like, if you're like, Sasha, talk about chickens.
Talk about chickens, but your reader has a point.
Yeah.
So Sasha would talk about chickens in the sense that, and like, tell me if I'm right or not. You would talk about chickens in the context of birth, evolution, and change.
Sure,
personal change. So you would take that chicken and you would use it as a metaphor for, personal transformation. Or you could take that chicken and use it as a metaphor for discipline, as the person who cares for the chicken. You could take that chicken and use it as a metaphor for grounding.
I love it.
Connection to nature. Like, that as humans, we're wired for story. The person that I keep hearing say this is Brene Brown, although I'm sure it came from somebody else.
I love her so much.
I want to be her when I grow
she's
up.
Like,
she's
my spirit. She's my spirit animal.
For real.
I fucking love that woman.
For
Anyways.
real. Her and Glennon Doyle, seriously.
Oh, Glennon Doyle. The first time I ever read that Love Warrior, I think I cried like the whole book. I was like, why am I loving this so much? And I don't even I used to hate the word love. Yeah. That's what it's called, right? Love Warrior?
Yep.
And just her journey of loving herself. Man, I loved that book.
Have you read Untamed yet?
No, I need to.
Girl, you need to. I'm almost done it. It's amazing.
Seriously? Okay, I'm gonna write it down. Keep going though, because I'm gonna order that as soon as I get off the phone with you. So
either on Audible or in print. I'm listening to it on Audible, and she narrates it, so it's amazing.
Okay, Audible. So it is then.
Right at that point, what you get to do is fill in your outline. And once you fill in your outline, oh, look, magic, you have a first draft. Once you have a first draft, now you get to self-edit. And I highly, highly recommend that writers not self-edit while they're writing their first draft. Dear God, for the love of your published book, do not edit while you are writing your draft. Don't do it. Just don't. You will kill your book before it's even born.
Solid advice. So recommendations on self-editing? Wait until the end.
Absolutely.
What other tips do you have as far as that step?
Take it a bite at a time. And your self-edit is only a step in the direction of getting an objective edit, an outside edit. You're too close to the work as the author to get the editing process done yourself. I am an editor. I edit for other people. And when I write, I have an editor.
I like that. So what, as an editor, what do you do? I mean, because I know nothing about editing. Basically you're going to laugh at this. My version of editing is going through and seeing what red squiggly lines are on the paper that I need to fix.
So you're like bargain basement Fiverr level proofreading.
Oh yeah. It's so funny because even to this day, like my social media posts or my blogs or just any of that stuff, people will always message me and be like, you misspelled a word, or this doesn't make sense. And I'm like, yeah, because I don't fucking proofread. I'm not an editor. Like, I don't give a shit. So I think that's hilarious.
Hey, I'm just going to toss this out there. I have like 3 people that I have access to. I have admin access to their pages for that reason. I don't tell them. I just go in and I fix their stuff.
Maybe I need that.
It's a thing I do for people that I love. And it makes me happy because I read their stuff and I'm like, that's wrong. It's wrong. It's I don't want to tell them and be a jerk. Let me just fix it for you. And
I'm surprised. I don't know if I've gotten anything from you, but now he's squealing. But yeah, I've gotten tons of people who are like, you spelled this wrong. I'm like, damn it, I don't care. That's not the point.
Who cares? So you're asking me, as an editor, what do I do?
Yes.
As an editor, I have the best job ever because I am a big reader. I'm a big book lover. I always have been from the time I was young. So I have the best job ever. I get to read. I get to read. Basically, self-development books is my niche, right? So I get to read self-development books. So books that are meant to help people and support them in their growth. I get to read them before anybody else does. I get to get paid to do it, and I get to help people make them better. Because no matter what, I don't care who you are. I guarantee you, Brene Brown has an editor that is like both her best friend and her worst enemy.
Probably.
Every book you have ever loved has an editor. And that editor's job is to take that book, find that author's obsessions. Every writer has an obsession. Some people are addicted to semicolons. Some people love ellipses. Some people, one of my current clients is addicted to the phrase, and then one fateful day. I've edited out at least 10 instances of that phrase. And I love it. And there's nothing wrong with that because that's the purpose of the first draft. I believe Anne Lamott refers to it as the shitty first draft. You have to let your book be born however that book wants to be born. Whatever it looks like, get out of the way and just let it be born. As an editor, my job is to take that raw material, that thing that just came through, take that baby from you, clean it up, wipe it down, shine it up, wrap it in a blanket, and hand it back to you. That's my job as an editor.
Oh, I like that. Now you got me thinking, like, what do I say all the time? I know I say the word, like, when I speak. I know I ask for, like, confirmation a lot, like, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I know that I say those a lot, but I don't know if I write it a lot.
I'd love to see if you write like you speak. A lot of people do, and some don't. Some have a very distinctive writing voice. And what's also cool about my job, particularly when I'm working with a first-time writer, is watching a writer find their voice. Get out of their own way and find their voice.
I love that. So what does that process look like?
Writing is all about surrender. Writing is all about surrender. My experience with myself, my own writing process, and every client that I've ever worked with is the more you try to control the process, the harder the process becomes. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my God, I have the worst writer's block, I want you to ask yourself, am I a perfectionist? Because if you are a perfectionist, you will be in writer's block all the time. As writers, the misconception, the lie is that we're somehow in charge of this idea that we're bringing into the world. And even if it's filled with pieces of our own story, even if it's something that is inspired by our own lives, the idea that we're bringing into the world is an entity of its own.
Yes,
that is
I love that.
That's for you to open up and let it through. You are the gate through which this entity is passing, and your job as the writer is to get out of the way.
I love that. I think there was a book on that too. Big Magic, maybe?
Yeah, I think she talks about that. Absolutely. But my experience has been very much that is true. Big Magic by
I
Liz
absolutely,
Gilbert
yes, I absolutely believe that.
And I recommend it to a lot of my clients because it gives a really good way to explain how creativity works by taking the pressure off of the creative. So yes, one of the people that I admire very much has described it this way. And I've also lived the truth of that and watched other people live the truth of that. It's very, very real.
Yeah, I would say so too. I even used that in for an example before, hey, if you don't act on this, it's going to bounce to somebody else. And and then 6 months down the road, you're going to be like, that person stole my idea. Well, no, the idea got sick of waiting around for you to take action. So it bounced to somebody who would.
That's right. That's exactly right. And some ideas will stay with you. Some ideas will stay with you. And some will leave. Some are meant for you and you alone. Some are just meant to be born. And will go to anyone to be born. And I mean, the cool thing about this, our current social context, because right now we're recording this, it's March the 29th, and we're in the middle of a lockdown. It's a great time to write a book. That book you always wanted to write, now's the time.
Yo. So, okay. I love that. And maybe that's what I will, among the other things that keep me occupied, I would love to write a book someday.
Let's shoehorn that in there.
Yep. Maybe that's what, here, when my husband gets home, I'll be like, take the kids. I got a book to write. Because it's funny. Go ahead.
He'll be like, what? You doing what now? Good Lord.
What are you doing? No, his job has been crazy busy. Most people are being stuck at home, and he's in food manufacturing. Yeah. And they have doubled their production since being stuck. So our lives have been flipped completely opposite. Me, I'm working about the same, but with the two kids home now, they used to go to daycare a couple days a week, but now they're full time. And then he's working 16-hour days instead of an 8 or 10-hour day. So I'm very much solo parenting with two young ones and working. So we'll see how long, this is the magic of personal development and time management and just not being a perfectionist, like you say, because I'm just showing up, this is how it is. Anyway, so you're taking people through this process. So they have this book, they have this idea. It's all on paper or digital. I'm not quite sure how that works.
Digital,
so it's
always.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. You have this final draft. What happens after the final draft? We're all in the same agreement. This is what the book's going to be.
This is it. Okay. So there's a couple of different directions you go from there. Are you self-publishing or are you traditional publishing?
I don't even know what the difference are.
So traditional publishing is your publishing houses. You guys all know them, right? Random House, McGraw-Hill, Hay House, all of those are publishing houses. So when you go through a traditional publishing house, they take on the promotion, the production, and most of the costs of your book. But in order to get them to do that, you have to write a proposal. You have a manuscript, and you get to turn around and write a proposal for that manuscript and then take it to auction and get a publishing house to purchase the rights to your book. So there's a whole nother process if you're going the traditional route. The bonus of going the traditional route is you will be in bookstores across the world. Traditional publishing houses go wide, so you get a lot of exposure very, very quickly. It also costs you. There's a buy-in for a traditional publishing house for an author. They will say, this is awesome, we'll take it, but it's going to cost you X for like the editing process. In like, well, we're going to take this X percentage of your profit because of of our end.
Is that where like royalties and stuff come in on books? Yeah. Is that a thing still?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So the royalty percentage that an author takes is significantly is not what you'd think. They don't get as much as you'd think. Whereas with self-publishing, which is a fantastic way that, you know, the digital world has removed the gatekeepers from the publishing world. Now it lets a lot of garbage get through, frankly, stuff that maybe that should never have seen the light of day, but you know, maybe that's not for me to say. It allows everybody access to the publishing world. So if you want to go to the self-publishing route, you can go Kindle Direct or you can go Ingram Spark. Both of those are platforms where once you have your digital manuscript, your cover design, which is something that's important, you need to hire somebody to create a cover, a back cover, and a spine for you, so that whole file now looks like a book, right? When you download an ebook to your Kindle, it has a cover, it's in a particular file format, it's still a book. So you get all of those things and you take them to Kindle Direct and you upload them. And it's now available on Kindle Direct for purchase anywhere.
Really?
Yeah. My book is available on Kindle Direct Publishing. My book is, as you know, but as some of your listeners might not, is called The Courage Key, Unlocking Yourself from Anxiety and Taking Back Control of Your Life. It is available on Kindle Direct Publishing in paperback and in ebook format.
Okay. See, I knew it was on Kindle and I didn't know that you could get, okay, I'm going to write this down because I'm going to buy your book now too. A real copy. I want like a real one.
Yes, you can get, it's not as fat as, you know, some of the other books on my shelf. It's a fairly thin little book. It's an easy read. But like I said, right way back at the beginning, the purpose of this book wasn't for me to become a famous author. It was for me to walk through the process from beginning to end. That's why I did it.
I like that. So what was like the biggest challenge of self-publishing or just your whole journey through writing that book?
It made me a better editor because I now feel for my clients. I understand what it's like to hand somebody your baby and have them read through it with a critical eye.
Oh, that seems scary to me. Like at one point I'm like, who gives a shit? But the other part of me is like, oh man, they're going to tear this apart.
Yes. And it's given me a bit of softness as an editor. I was never mean, but at the same time, being on the other side, it gave me an understanding of the vulnerability and trust that an author is giving me when they hand me their manuscript to edit. And I think I understand how much of an honor it is now more than I did before. I was always thrilled and excited to do it and felt very honored that people would select me as their editor. But going through the process myself, it offered me the opportunity to really open up into understanding the vulnerability that an author offers me when they hand me their manuscript to be their editor.
I like that.
And that I get to treat that manuscript with a certain amount of reverence and love. Because again, like I hold it like I would hold a baby. I'm not tearing your work apart. That's not my job. I'm cleaning your work up. This work has potential. This work is ready. It has been born. And now we get to clean it up and shine it up and make it beautiful It's raw right now, and we get to clean it up and shine it up and make it beautiful so that we can then send it out into the world.
I like that. So what do you work with any publishing houses, or do you just mostly work towards self-publishing, or what's your favorite?
I mostly work with self-publishing authors. Now, that being said, I have connections and colleagues in the traditional publishing world that I can collaborate with if traditional publishing is the way a client wants to go.
Okay, so the options are really kind of, well, do you have that conversation? Like, what would you say to somebody like me if I'm like, okay, I'm going to write a book, and you're like, okay, do you want to self-publish, or like, how do you peel that out of somebody that would work best for them? Like, what questions would you ask yourself?
That would be part of our initial conversation. So the very first thing we would do is we would talk about your idea, and it would give me a sense of the shape of what we're working with. And then from there, I would ask you, are you looking to self-publish or traditional publish? And you would ask me the difference, and I would explain to you what I just explained to you. And then you would make a choice. Now, if you select traditional publishing, I would make two recommendations. I would say you have a choice between two different ways of doing this. We work through and we create the outline, and then from that outline, we create a proposal. Because if you have a full manuscript and then you go back and write a proposal, you've almost done more work than you need to if you're going traditional publishing.
Okay, and I guess that's kind of what I was wondering, like what the timeline is different. I'm assuming it's much quicker to self-publish than it is to probably go through a publishing house, but
yeah, it could be and it couldn't be. Yeah, no, maybe. Like your book will see the light of day faster, but a traditional publishing house could pick you up really quickly. But then the process to get it done could take 2 years. Whereas if you're self-publishing, when I mentor clients, if somebody's really motivated, I can take them from idea and not a word on paper all the way through to uploaded in 6 months.
Okay, I guess that's kind of what I was looking for, is like, if today somebody wanted to write a book, if they were like, hey, Stephanie, I need your help, when can I have a book on the shelf? And that's kind of, I guess, what I was
6 months
for. 6 months.
If you're really motivated,
disciplined, and
disciplined, like if you're dedicated to getting this done, if you're really, really behind this idea and you mean it, then we can have it done in 6 months.
I suppose that might be kind of difficult if you weren't even sure what your idea was. You're just like, I want to write a book.
No problem. We take care of that in the first 2 calls.
Oh, that's awesome.
By the time we're done our second call, you have your outline.
I love that. So what else do people? Yeah, no, absolutely. I know. He's sitting there. He's like, what do you want? Do you want to talk to? He doesn't know what he wants.
How cute is he?
So what other questions or concerns do people usually have when they come to you?
Honestly, that's really it. Right? Like, you either come to me as a writer and say, I really want to write a book, and this is kind of the shape of the idea, but I don't know where to go from there. I'm not a writer. Or you come to me with an already completed manuscript and you go, I really want to publish this, but I don't know if it's any good or if it needs improvement. So I enter the process at various points along the way. And then the questions are individual to the client, right? Like, how do I change this? How do I evolve this? I want my reader to take away this, but I feel like it's not landing that way. How do we change that? So at that point, the questions become unique to each writer and each project.
I like that. And so you have this book now, and I'm assuming, this is just an assumption, but you don't help with the marketing piece, right? So a lot of times you can have this book, it's there, it's on Kindle, or it's on the real shelves or whatever. And now what do we do with it? How do you market to the masses?
That is a marketer's question, and I am not a marketer.
That's kind of what I was like.
Yeah,
so now
that's not my job.
But I suppose nonetheless, writing a book kind of makes you an expert in your field, though. I mean, I think it adds some credibility to whatever it is that you're doing, wouldn't you say?
That's why many people do it. Absolutely. That's why many people do it. The most of whom I work with are like healers and consultants and coaches and people in the personal development space. So those people already have businesses and brands that this book is positioning them to be to get more expertise in, to be seen as more of an expert, to reach more people, to help more people, and to bring more people closer to them in their business. And at that point, as long as your book aligns with your brand, any branding coach and marketing coach can help you with that.
I like that. Okay. So how do people, I guess, is this like your only program? Like what all services like do you offer? Like what's typical, or is it personalized?
My services are multi-tiered. I will personalize my services to a certain extent. So if you already have a manuscript and you're like, dude, I'm the only one who's ever read this. My husband read it or my wife read it. And they're like, this is good, but they're going to tell me that anyway, and you really want this manuscript to be published. One of the very first things that I do for people is I will just give them a read through. They come to me, they say, can you give me some feedback on this book? So I take their book, I read it through, and I will tell them honestly how I feel about their manuscript. Like the structure is great, but you could use some work here, and here. I really think you connect with your reader, in this chapter, maybe dig a little bit more into the emotion in this chapter. But no editing. I don't do any editing. I just kind of give them some feedback on where I feel their manuscript's at, and how they can take it and move forward. If I feel they're ready for an editor, then I will tell them so. And I've had a lot of clients move from that step into a full edit process with me, which is so much fun. It's fun for me. It could be boring for others. I spend hours in front of computer screens working with words and fixing things and reading. It's detail work. It's labor heavy for me, but I love doing it.
Yeah, none of that sounds appealing to me. But that's why there's like so many, yeah, anyways.
Exactly. And I get to be a coach through that process as well. Because through the edit process, I generally talk to my author at least 6 times and, help them deal with their shit as it comes up. Because as a writer, your shit's going to come up. It's just gonna.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Go ahead. Tell me what the most common ones are.
Oh, is it good enough? Yeah. Is it good enough? Why am I doing this? Should I even be doing this? Should I take this out? Should I keep it in? Are my words worthy of being read? Are my words worthy of being published? Worthiness is the thing that comes up the most often.
My thing that as I'm sitting here, because I'm like, oh, what would my book be about? Mine is like, well, do you even have enough content for a book? And then if you do, would anybody even read it? Like those are the things that immediately come up for me just sitting here thinking about it.
And that's worthiness. My experience of that is that's worthiness, because my experience of you is, hell yeah, you have enough content for a book. Number one, absolutely. We could create a book. I could sit down with you in 90 minutes and we'd have an outline guaranteed. But are my words even worth reading? Where does that come from? What place inside of you does that come from?
Oh, I know. It's just because, this is just something that I've continuously worked on and he's growling now. Like I said before, he's just making all the noises.
What can I do with this voice of mine?
He's just experimenting. So it sounds like I don't even know what. But anyways, no, I always know growing up, because it's always been do as I say, not as I do, or sit down, shut up, or, things like that. And so it's those underlying stories. And so it's just so interesting, because as soon as you feel like you're past something, it's something like a story or a book or an idea where you're like, oh shit, maybe there's another layer to that. So I'm actually very intrigued right now, because I'm like, ooh, that's still kind of there. That stung a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe I gotta dive into that, because it's so funny. Even people say to me, oh, you're so confident, you're so this, you're so that. And I know that I am on a deeper level, but then there's something that will trigger me, that little trigger of emotion that it's like, ooh, would anybody want to
Ooh.
read this? And it's like, where did
Yeah.
that come from? So I'm very intrigued by like what layer this is at and how I can dive deeper into that. So very, very interesting.
Well, and for a lot of people, putting a book out there, especially if it's rooted in your own experience and you tell your own personal stories, it's like standing up in a crowded theater naked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because it's like
asking
there,
everybody to look
print.
at you. Yes.
Yeah. Like you can't undo a book. Like
Nope.
I could pretty easily delete this entire podcast and then in a
Yep.
few years nobody would even know that it ever existed, right?
A book
But, like,
can't be undone.
Exactly. You can't really undo if something's in writing. It just, there's a permanence to it, I think.
Yes.
And that's, I think that might be the scary part. At least that's just like where my brain's going like right now is like, oh shit, like that's real.
Yes. But what do we know about fear? What do we know about fear, Sasha?
False evidence appearing real.
Do we, when you encounter fear, do
you just have to go through
run
it.
the other way, or do you run towards?
Oh yeah, you run towards. We know this.
Yes.
You and I both know this. That's
what
like,
I'm saying.
I'm
what
like,
do we
oh,
know?
shit.
Other people. Damn it! Now I have to go do this.
Now I have to write a fucking book
because I don't have enough to do already. You don't have to. You don't have to. You get to.
Oh,
you get to.
Yep.
If you want to, you get to.
It's gonna happen. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah.
It's not if, it's when.
Oh yeah, it is. I look forward to reading it. Now, that being said, I want to point you in the direction of something that I literally just launched yesterday.
Let's hear it.
So, where we're at in the world right now, this whole COVID-19 pandemic thing has touched the whole world, I think, in a way that nothing else ever has.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is a situation, a context that the world has never seen. We are in global pandemic, like this has touched every life.
Mm-hmm.
Every country in the world is on lockdown. We are all in this. As humans, we are all, for once, it's all of us together against something else. It's not one group of us against the other. It's all of us together against a common challenge, which I think is incredible. Now, that being said, when I go on social media, what I see a lot of, 98% of what's on my social media feed is fear and panic and uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
COVID-19 is incredibly virulent. It's very contagious. That's why we're all on lockdown. So is fear and panic.
Absolutely.
And what I'm seeing around me is a world full of fear and panic. You have, it's either fear and panic or it's denial. Mm-hmm. Now, those things are all contagious. This is history unfolding around us. And in the middle of that history, there are stories unfolding everywhere around the world in people's personal lives. Stories of love, of everyday heroism, of support, of kindness, of compassion, big and small. Big stories and small stories. Everyday little tiny examples of reaching out to your fellow human being. And, I would imagine, although I haven't heard any yet, immense, incredible stories of heroism from our workers on the front lines. Mm-hmm. So that being said, yesterday I launched a page called Viral Humanity. And the purpose of this page is to lift up stories of love, hope, kindness, connection, and heroism through the course of this pandemic.
I love that. I saw that.
Because I believe, I feel drawn, I feel called as a storyteller and, as a story curator and a mentor, I feel called to help people tell these stories, to make sure that these stories are heard, that they're captured, that they're curated, so that they get remembered. Because in every challenge and every crisis is opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an opportunity for us to connect and to demonstrate courage and step in and do the damn thing and get brave and play big and step into love for each other. In a time when we're frankly in an unprecedented disconnected state because we're all locked in our damn houses.
But it's that united oneness or universal oneness, right?
Yes.
So now it brings us all together in a sense that we are pretty much in similar shoes. I mean, minus the, the healthcare workers and, even like the janitors, like the people who have to work, like my husband, like food manufacturing.
Yeah.
But in some sense, it brings us all together because you're right. We have a common goal. We have a common fight.
Yes, exactly. And so the purpose of Viral Humanity is to make sure that that these stories get captured, because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, potentially down the road, they could be printed and bound and put on a shelf. I would love to see that.
That would be so cool.
Primarily right now, it's to, like, in every challenge, there's no going back, right, Sash? We can't go back. We cannot go backwards. No matter what, there's no going backwards. We will move forward, and we will come to a new normal. We will come to a new comfortable. We will come to a new peace on the other side of this. But through the challenge, it's on each of us to decide what we want to curate through this time. Who do we want to be on the other side? How do we want to harness this time? Do we want to just by default be panicked and scared and go into paranoia and create our new normal by default? Or do we want to decide, you know what? This is an unprecedented time and we could really create some incredible change on the other side of this. And what I want to double down on is this: love or leadership or support or whatever it is that calls to you. And what I want to double down on is, telling the stories of love and connection and heroism.
Absolutely. I love that, because I do feel like, the most contagious thing out there is fear. Fear creates more fear, anxiety creates more anxiety. And so you have to consciously choose different. And I feel like this is where personal development and kind of getting out of your own way really, really has kind of paved the road for me and a lot of others. It's like, okay, there is a global pandemic, but I'm not freaking out. Like, I'm very much aware of of the importance of this, of the impact of this. But at the same time, I'm not freaking out. I'm being cautious, but I'm not freaking out.
Same. I thank fuck is usually what I say. I'm very grateful every day for my very robust toolbox.
Yes, absolutely.
You and I both have an incredibly robust personal toolbox of stuff that we can deploy when times get hard to keep ourselves grounded. And I am so bloody thankful every day that I have that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I look back and I'm like, shit, if this would have happened 10 years ago, I would have, oh man, I don't even know where I'd be. I'd probably be getting drunk and just being like, cheers to the end of the world. Like,
seriously, same. Same. And now I'm doubling down on meditating and, journaling my way through it and curating stories of love, positivity, and hope, because it's a choice. And the other thing that struck me is that fear is very easily contagious, because fear is not risky. Fear is self-protection. Fear is safe. Love is a risk.
Because you can get hurt. Like, love, putting yourself out there, it's a very vulnerable emotion. And I feel like us as a society, or us as, maybe this is more in our culture than in others, but if you put yourself out there too much, you might get hurt or people might judge you. Whereas fear is, it's normal, which is so ridiculous. But I suppose that goes back to our brains, just default. Like default is fear, default is negativity, because that keeps you small, that keeps you safe, but that also puts you at a higher risk for a lower immune system, because it's a very low vibrating energy.
It is.
Or a low vibration, and it can make you more susceptible to more fear and more infection and more contagion or whatever, because of that lowered immune system. So it's like you have to consciously make an effort to raise your vibration to I don't even know what I'm trying to get at, but it's a conscious effort to choose love, to choose joy, to choose looking at positive. Is it easy? Absolutely not. But once you start creating that momentum, a body in motion stays in motion, right? So it's easier to show more love if you continue to practice the action of love. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the reason that fear is so easy, why it comes so easily to us, is because it is our neurologically, it's our default position. It's
Absolutely,
our lizard brain going,
it is.
You need to survive, and fear will keep you alive. You need to survive.
To a sense, fear will keep you alive.
You can survive in fear. You won't thrive. Exactly. And fear is also not meant to be a lifestyle. Fear is meant to be switched on and switched off. That's how your brain is designed. It's meant to be switched on and switched off. We're not designed to live in a constant state of low simmering fear all the time, because that will kill you.
Yeah. And I do want to make note that I think that a lot of this fear is because we feel very out of control. I feel like a lot of people have complete control, or, quote unquote, complete control over their lives. And we have no control over this. The only control we have is like staying home, basically. Right. But aside from that, like we don't have any control. And so that, control factor creates the fear too. And I feel like this is another, and maybe this is me being like hippie woo woo, but this is a very universal thing. And I think each person on this planet has a soul, and it's our soul's path to whatever happens. Right. So I know that there's going to be like lives that are lost and things like that. And that's really unfortunate. It really is. But at the same time, that may be that soul's purpose was to, and I don't know, maybe this is just my brain, but I'm like, that person is making a sacrifice for the greater of our entire world, because something had to give for us to wake up, guys. Like shit's not working. Like it shouldn't take a virus for us to be like, oh wow, we're running go, and we have no control over this or that, yet we're sitting here in like this fear, panic ridden life. I don't know. That's just me like going next world, but that's like what my thoughts are.
I think that there's something to be said for the position that you're taking. And I think you're absolutely right. If you go next level woo woo and your soul contracts, your soul made a decision when it decided to, come into this particular lifetime, that this was the path it was going to walk. And for a greater, and not just a greater global good, but you're talking like fifth dimension and universal.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm like
raising of consciousness.
Level.
That's like next level stuff.
But that's the thing, like that universal oneness, like there has to be sacrifices and things have to happen for the entire vibration, like the whole frequency to rise.
And when you think about it on an individual level, like, and like my husband and I were having this conversation last night. I'm like, calling of the herd is all well and good until it's your mom.
Yes, exactly. And so then it's well, where do you draw the line? And I even thought about that because I have family members that are definitely susceptible to illness. And I'm like, okay, I take this stance now. Would I still have the same stance if my sister or my mother or my whatever gets
because
sick?
you get to have a both and, because yes, I believe this, and I get to grieve the personal loss of this person, because that's also part of my journey.
Exactly.
And the truth of the matter is human life has meaning because it's finite.
Exactly.
it begins and it ends. It's finite. It is a space and time. And if it didn't have those finite boundaries, it would have so much less meaning.
I agree with that. Yeah. If we knew it was just going to be forever and we would take, oh man, you think we take advantage of things now? Just think what we would take for granted if we knew we lived forever.
Exactly. The beauty is in the fragility of human life.
Yeah. It's in those.
You can't have one without the other.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And it's not like an if then, like you can still believe in, raising the frequency of the universe and grieve the loss of a loved one. I like that.
Absolutely.
I feel like it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I don't have to just have one single minded way of thinking. I can very much have, or we as a society or we as people can very much have like this worldly view, but then also have like, and this is my current reality view too.
Exactly. And we as humans have a spectrum of feelings.
Absolutely.
It's not the goal to be happy all the time. Happy isn't the only, approved emotion for the feeling.
Thank you for saying that.
You get to also feel grief and anger and sadness and frustration and jealousy and joy and exhaustion and elation, and you get to feel all the things, and that's what makes a full human experience.
I love that. Thank you for saying that, because I feel so often that we just get stuck in, I need to be happy and I need to be content, but there is a magic and a beauty in that quote unquote dark side or those emotions, because it just makes us appreciate the bright of day that much more. If we're like, oh God, like feeling sad really sucks. But imagine if you couldn't feel sad, like how, that's,
if you don't get to feel sad, then you do not understand the value of joy.
Exactly. You have a way with words.
Get grief. If grief is not a thing you've ever experienced, then how can you really sink into love?
Mm-hmm. Yes. 100%. My son agrees. He's
get me off
smiling at me.
onto my existential philosophical trains of thought.
No, I love that shit though. And you have a way with words. And that's probably what makes you such a good editor, a good writer. And, you're really living your life's path because you're able to pull those pieces out of people. Cause you're like saying things and I'm like, yes, she made a sentence out of what's in my head. She made
that's
this make
my
sense.
Job.
So I love how we just like tied that all right back into your soul's purpose, your path, and what it is that you're like your zone of genius.
It totally is. And like as a writer and as an editor, I also read a lot. So I digest a lot of ideas all the time.
Yeah, I love that.
But I do want to invite anybody listening to this podcast to hop on over to Viral Humanity and share a story, because this is how it gets contagious, right? This is how it gets spread from person to person to person. Humanity won't go viral. The acts of kindness won't go viral if there's nobody there to see them. And if there's nobody there to share stories with me, because I am not sharing my own stories, I am curating the stories of others. So if you have a story to tell, if you have a story to share, please reach out to me and we'll put that stuff in the show notes. Come follow Viral Humanity, share it with others, and contribute. Make the choice. I really invite you to contribute to spreading love and spreading hope and stepping into leadership. And even just the smallest way of sharing a hopeful post during this particular time. If that's the first step that you've ever taken in the direction of leadership, I invite you to do that.
I know I already went over there while we were on the phone. I'm like, ooh, yes, like that. And I'm going to share a story and I'm going to tag you.
Yeah, you are. I'm doing my
idea.
best to reach out to people individually at this point to get their story and curate it. I don't know if you've heard of Humans of New York. One of my favorite pages. I love following it. I want this to be curated like that, in that same style. So
I like that. Okay.
I will be sharing stories like that.
Okay. I love it.
I want to take that baby. I'm so sorry that like we're miles and miles apart. I just want to like take him and squish him.
You can squish him after this whole global pandemic is done. We might just have to make a trip up. You can squeeze both my little babies, but
yes.
All right. So
God,
to land this plane, how can people get a hold of you for like your editing stuff? Like what's the best way to contact you? How can they learn more? Stuff like that.
So you can find me on Facebook, Stephanie Renaud, STEPHANIE RENAUD. And you can shoot me a message there. You can go to my website, which is www.stephanierenaud.ca. Or you can reach out to Sasha and she can point you in my direction. Yeah, she can hook you up. So if that's, and I also didn't answer the rest of like what the other things that I do. I do the read through, I do the edit, but I also do a first draft mentorship with people. So those are really the three things that I do. You know, I'll give you your read through feedback. I do the first draft mentorship. So if you've been trying to write this book, but you can't, you just haven't been able to get it done, that's that program. We'll take you through it and I'll have you done in 3 months for that first draft. And then I do the editing. So it just came up that we didn't finish that little piece.
I was going to say, yeah, because I did think that we touched on two things. That's kind of like the first initial read through, editing, and then taking your book from start to finish, an idea to a finished product. And then also I like it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I loved this conversation. My gosh,
I always love talking to you.
I know we've already been talking for an hour. I'm like, I feel like we could go like another hour. So maybe in a few months after things settle down, we'll have to do another one and just talk about, I don't know, either books or worldly hippie woo-woo stuff. I love it.
Always.
Well, thank you for hopping on. And what I'm going to do is I will put all of those links in the show notes so people can reach out to you. And I invite anybody who listened to this podcast, if at any point you resonated or you were like, ooh, I like that, or if this challenged you in some way, let us know. Take a screenshot, share it on social media, and then you can keep listening to my son growl at me. But yeah, take a screenshot, share it on social media, let us know what you thought, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Sash.